Welcome to Crush Your Money Goals, where we dive deep into all things money as your 2 millionaire mentors. I'm Bernadette Joy.
And I'm Stefanie Gonzalez. This season, we're shifting gears and focusing on something that affects us all, quitting with confidence.
From financial habits to career transitions, we're here to guide you through the journey of taking charge of your finances and pursuing your dreams fearlessly.
Tune in every week as we share tips, stories, and expert insights to help you crush your money goals and embrace change with open arms. Welcome to Season 7, Quit with Conviction. Gigi, thank you so much for being here with both Bernadette and I. I listened to your episode with Bernadette a couple of years ago, and so it's kind of bittersweet that we're all getting a chance to meet together today. But for those who are listening to us for the first time, can you please introduce yourself and tell us how much of an amazing woman you are?
Oh, you're so sweet. Hi, friends. Hi, Bernadette. Hi, Stefanie. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. For anybody who doesn't know, my name's Giovanna González, but a lot of people know me as Gigi or the First Gen Mentor. And I'm a former investment professional turned TikToker, financial educator, public speaker, and now the author of the bestselling book, Cultura and Cash.
That's exciting.
I love that you're claiming it bestseller. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. It's I worked a lot for it too. Well, actually, I didn't. That wasn't my goal. It just kind of happened, but I did a lot of behind the scenes work to build up hype, which led to the bestseller status. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Of course, I think you were a great addition to this podcast this season because we have a big theme specifically around quitting. Right? And quitting can take multiple shapes, forms, and fashions, whether it's quitting something that doesn't serve you any longer, something that you thought, whether it be mindset, habits, all that good stuff. But can you tell us a little bit of what has come into your life that you've had to quit to bring you to this point that we are right now being a best-selling author and doing the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, I quit my 10-year corporate career in financial services. So I spent the first 3.5 years working in insurance. Then I pivoted to investment consulting and then investment management, where I spent the majority of my career. To be more specific, in my role, I did investment performance measurement. So what that meant was that I generated reports that demonstrated how our institutional clients' portfolio was doing for the month, the quarter. So we were managing big money. Like, this wasn't retail investors. It was like pension funds, endowments, foundations. And I liked the work. I really did it. I spent all day on Excel, which people are like, what? How can you tolerate a job like that? I loved it because I would zone out. I would put on my podcast music and just, do my little spreadsheet work. And it was a nice groove. It was a nice pace of life. And, my most recent corporate job, which was with Northern Trust.
Yeah.
I always like to shout them out because it was so hard to quit them because they were a good company. I spent the majority of my corporate career working for bad companies, bad bosses, crappy coworkers. So the fact that I had finally made it to a company where I felt seen and valued and my boss was supporting my career trajectory, it was hard to quit that. But yeah, that's what I love to do, what I'm doing now.
Wow. And so what happened into the point of you leaving this place that you loved, these people that you felt very connected to, an organization? What was the point that Gigi realized it was time to quit? What happened that got you to that point?
TikTok happened. That's what happened. TikTok happened. So again, going back to this great company that I work for, Northern Trust. And when I say great, I do want to be more transparent. So I wasn't killing it salary-wise. My salary was $70,000. It was a comfortable salary when I have a double income, no kids, and I was living in Phoenix at the time, right? So we were comfortable. I think we were considered like upper middle class based on, the cost of living in Phoenix. So we were very comfortable. And at the time, I had learned about financial literacy and I was really into the FIRE movement, which is why I'm such a big fan of the FIRE movement, because if it doesn't lead to early retirement, it can just lead to a lot of beautiful things, which is what it led for me, the ability to quit my job to now do something that I love. But yeah, so I'm basically, to paint the picture, I'm working this job, doing my little Excel sheets, my reports, having a great boss, having great coworkers. And because this is finally the first company that I'm getting a work-life balance, I have the ability to explore hobbies, which I'd never had a chance to with my other jobs. I was always working so late and felt so depleted. So with this new time, I'm like, I love volunteering. I've been volunteering for years. And now that I had this new knowledge of financial literacy, I'm like, let me be a financial literacy, like pro bono educator. So I started teaching with the nonprofit called the YWCA. Again, this was as a volunteer. And I did that while I had my full-time job. So again, my full-time job and then my hobbies, which was volunteering on my free time. But that changed in March of 2021 when I started creating content on TikTok about financial literacy and career advocacy for Latinas. I went viral the next month, which honestly, I was really lucky, especially now. It's kind of hard to go viral the way that I did back then. And I gained a big following. This is April of 2021. So with the big following, I started getting reached out to for paid opportunities. So I started getting emails like, hey, can you come teach Budgeting 101 to our students at this college? We will pay you. Can you do a sponsored post for us? What is your rate? And I was like, oh crap, I was just doing this for fun. Like I didn't know you could make money doing this, right? So then because of the type of work that I did in investment management, it's an extremely regulated industry. And I had to get written approval for any outside compensation outside of my 9 to 5 with them. So I, being the good employee that I was, followed protocol, submitted the request, and it was immediately denied. They said it was illegal and a reputational risk for me to do that type of work. So that's kind of where I had a fork in the road of like, do I stop TikTok altogether and keep doing my 9 to 5 and keep going with my FIRE goals of retiring at 45? Or do I quit to explore the unknown?
So let me ask you this. At that moment in time if you can remember it, when you got that denial, like what was your emotional response to that? For them to say,
I was pissed.
It's so interesting to say, to say that it's like a reputational risk for you to do like heart work.
Legal and reputational risk. That's why I remember the words, because I was so pissed. I was so pissed because to me, I saw it like, it was one thing if I was presenting myself on social media as like, I work in Northern Trust and this is why you should listen. Not once did I ever name drop them. Never. But it would have led to that eventually. People would have looked me up on LinkedIn. So I can see how eventually it would have led to that. But yeah, it made me pissed, especially because I felt I was doing good work in the community. I was spreading financial literacy to marginalized communities, and my 9 to 5 was stopping me from doing that.
Was there anything even at the time, and this is not about Northern Trust, right? I think this is about corporations as a whole in my mind, because a lot of really talented people now are having to grapple with the brand identity that they now have, right? Outside of their corporate space. I think I see that a lot now. Yeah. But even at that, for, most companies have some type of, hey, we want to support DEI initiatives or communities in this way. And specifically in the financial services industry, right? You would assume that these companies and large corporations want to give back in some way, shape, form, or fashion. This is your way of being able to do that as an individual, but they're having to figure out this intersection of not allowing you to do so for legal reasons, right? So you're kind of in a rock and a hard place.
Well, and they definitely had those programs. And I was a part of those programs of, volunteer initiatives of doing financial literacy workshops through Northern Trust or things like that in the community. So that's one of the things that I loved about that company. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. When it came to me as an individual, they didn't want me representing Northern Trust out there as a financial educator, which I understand is their business and they have to protect their business. But it was also at a time when, again, I think it was in the middle of the pandemic. This is April of 2021 when I submitted my request. So, the mindset back then was very much like everybody reevaluating their values and the work that they're doing and whether this is the kind of stuff they want to do for the rest of their life. A lot of people reevaluate their relationships, their friend circles, where they were living. One of my best friends moved from California to New York City because she always wanted to live in New York City. This was her big dream. And the pandemic made her do that of like, I need to live my true life. Right. So yeah, a big part of that was also the Great Resignation was very much going on at this time. So for anybody who doesn't remember, it was a big wave of quitters that were quitting their jobs to explore a passion or to completely pivot to a new industry or to take a sabbatical and just to have some time to figure it out. So all of those things kind of played a factor in my decision to quit.
Let me ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being hella scared and 10 being super confident, how confident were you in this decision to quit at the time that you decided to do it?
I was confident because I wasn't planning to do it full time. I honestly called it a sabbatical for that's what I called it. I when I quit my job, I saw it as like, I need space for the next 6 months to just try this thing. And I I had plans to go back. I left in excellent standing. I gave a 4 weeks notice. My job really tried to keep me. They tried to work out like a part-time agreement. I'm like, I have to completely unplug and explore this side of me. And they were very supportive. They were very, very supportive. Awesome. I wasn't scared because again, I had plans to go back. I think the scary part came in when it pivoted from, this is no longer a sabbatical. This is a business. And now you have to make it work. That was the scary part.
I like that quote. I think we're going to include that quote in your assets for this. This is not right. This is not a sabbatical. This is a business now, right?
Yeah.
What did you? I mean, I know obviously from meeting you and following you, like you talk a lot about family dynamics and your relationship. So, what impact did quitting have on your family?
It's funny because I always mention how my parents had different opinions. My mom, who I no longer have a relationship with because she's abusive, my mom at the time was very supportive, surprisingly. She says, you are meant for this. You are a natural at this TikTok thing and to be speaking to people. You love to talk. So she's like, this is your thing. You have to do this. So she was really encouraging. And my dad, who I have a great relationship with, he was holding me back. And it was his fear. And I understand where he comes from, right? As an immigrant, you always want like the stable choice. And the fact that I had gone to college, gotten this nice office job for him, he's like, why are you leaving all that for TikTok? Like, what was the point of you going to school and all those hard years and your corporate career, you're just going to throw it all away. And I'm like, Dad, you're so dramatic. I am not throwing it all away. My degree isn't like evaporating. I still have my work experience. Nobody's taking that away from me. I still have my network. I left in excellent standing. So let's just see. Like I said, I've always played it safe. Like now is my opportunity. I have savings set aside to see what this can look like. And now that he's seen the success and the impact that I've made almost 3 years later, he's my biggest cheerleader and he totally understands why I did what I did.
Start your freedom plan today with Crush Your Money Goals. You can transform your financial future with our personalized program. Join me, Bernadette Joy, your millionaire mentor, and unlock your potential. In just 90 days, build the skills to grow your wealth and secure your financial future. Your future is waiting. Enroll now at crushyourmoneygoals.com.
You and I are very similar in regards to, similar thing with my mom. Before my dad passed away, he was very terrified of me leaving my day job. But then funny enough, at my father's funeral, one of his neighbors who I'd never met before, like showed me all of the texts of him saying like, oh, watch my daughter on this show or do that, or, but he never said that to me personally, until afterwards. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see.
Why are they like that?
Why, right? Why, right? And I love that you shared that so openly, Gigi, because, you bill yourself as a first gen, mentor, right? And what I think a lot of people will resonate with your story is that intersection between, your personal narrative and what the previous generation's narrative has been, and how do you reconcile those? And that's a lot of your theme in your book as well. So can you share a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So the book is called Cultura and Cash, Lessons from the First Gen Mentor for Managing Finances and Cultural Expectations. It's such a mouthful, the subtitle.
But you did it.
But-
you did it like a boss.
But it's so the subtitle is very clear on this isn't just your regular money book. This is a money book on how to navigate money. As primarily a first gen Latina is who I wrote it for, but I also said that secondary readers are first gen professionals. So first gen Filipina, first gen Nigerian, basically the first in your family to have the ability to build wealth because our parents were immigrants and we're just kind of living in survival mode. As first gen wealth builders, we have a lot of unique challenges with managing money. And I hadn't seen a single book that addressed these issues. A lot of it being with our money experience being very much tied to our family, where, the average middle class white American, they get to benefit from generational wealth being passed on to us. And for us, it's the opposite. Like we're always looking backwards and providing support to our family, thinking about retiring our parents. And we needed that voice. We needed that voice because I read over 50 personal finance books and it never addressed that. So I thought I was solid with my financial education. And then when I hit these real roadblocks with my Latino family, I'm like, oh, there's something missing here.
Yeah. I mean, so, so when I saw your book coming out, I was like, oh, yes, like I'm going to blow this up for like the Filipino community because it's been really interesting for me. Even if you're not Latino, like this book is definitely for a lot of people in this like first gen community, because what you said is so true about myself personally. Like I need this book because and you were very supportive. I wrote an article in Forbes about like what to do if you're your parents' retirement.
Your parents.
Plan,
I read it.
And yeah, well, it was funny because my editors didn't get it. And I was like,
of course they didn't.
Yeah, I know you, I mean, like, I think that's why I'm here, right? So I'm so glad that you wrote an entire book about it. Because even me just writing that one article, I was like, oh, this is like emotionally draining for me. So I can't even imagine like for you, like how much self-reflection did it require for you to write this book?
Honestly, the writing of it, that part wasn't hard. Like the self-reflection. Because I had a book coach. So she was there with me to manage my emotions, hype me up, give me positive feedback. The hard part was when I spoke on this topic at FinCon 2021. So I presented wealth building as a first generation American. And I remember when I submitted the topic, the FinCon committee got back to me and they're like, hey, we're interested in this, but what does this mean? They didn't even know like what my topic was about, even though I had explained in the description. So I explained how we have a unique set of challenges as the children of immigrants and that we're very much an underserved community in the financial education space. And I think it's something that's here to stay. And I love it. I love it because I was so invisible for most of my 20s when I was going through my own financial literacy journey. So, and it's a big reason why I decided to do hybrid publishing instead of looking for a traditional publishing deal where I get a book deal. I'm like, I know I'm going to face all these people that don't get it and I have to convince them. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. I know this book is needed. I know because my whole community on TikTok tells me that it's needed. So I'm like, I'm good. I'll take my own route.
I love that. That's a great reflection on understanding how you wanted to bring this book to the world and in a way meet the least amount of resistance to make it what you really wanted to make it for your community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's 100% why it's been successful because I had a final editorial say. So nobody was able to change my words. I said exactly what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it. But sorry, I forgot to finish my thought about how it was much harder delivering a presentation on wealth building as a first generation American at FinCon.
What was particularly challenging about the presentation versus writing the book?
Yeah. So with the presentation, it had 3 elements. So it was first defining what's a first generation wealth builder, and then the unique needs of a first generation wealth builder, and then actual examples of how that looks. And that third part was the hard part. And that third part was the only part I couldn't memorize, so the first 2 parts I practiced over and over. I memorized them because it was a monologue. And no matter what I did, no matter how many times I tried, the third part wouldn't stick. And it wasn't until later that I'm like, it's because it was very emotional. And I just owned it. I told my audience, it was a small audience because it was on a Friday. And I said, hey guys, I really tried to memorize this part too, but I'm going to lean on my notes because it just wasn't working. And even the day of my presentation, I was still practicing and still trying to memorize it. And tears were flowing down my face. And I didn't even know why. And again, now that I've reflected, it's because I'm like, why do I have to explain this? Why do I have to be the first one that talks about these difficult topics? So I cried a lot when I was, and also because at the time I worked on it since, I'm a perfectionist. So I was also, beating myself up for not memorizing it. And then when I went on stage, I was able to rely on my notes and stay composed. And I write about this in the book, Stefanie, if you read it, where I say that I was composed until a woman in the audience who's a fellow content creator raised her hand and she was crying. And she said, thank you so much for talking about this because I feel this too. And I deal with this in my personal life and nobody talks about this. And it's been so lonely. And seeing her cry just like made me finally crack. And I started crying on stage and so did other people. And it was like a very intimate moment with that audience. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to say this because I want you to hear it because, like I struggle with this personally. This is something that I'm still working on quitting, which is like, what is for mass appeal versus what does your audience really need right now? And you have so bravely chosen to serve your audience first, which I
unapologetically
admire about you. Yeah, that's right. Right. Because, and I've been on the FinCon board for the last 2 years and I've had conversations with them about like, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of bringing these types of topics to light. But, like when you are in the social media world or the traditional publishing world or, you've been crushing it. I've been watching all of your news channel interviews and stuff. Sometimes it's hard to make that balance between what those channels want you to say versus what you think needs to be said.
What they think will click versus what needs to be actually
like what will get more clicks, what will get more book sales, what will get more, more stage time, right? So for people who are listening to this, like what has helped you become more confident in choosing how to serve your audience versus sometimes the conflicting asks of these larger platforms?
Yeah. Book-wise, there's a very popular phrase. I did not come up with it. Again, it's a very well-known phrase in the book industry. It's called the riches are in the niches. Is it niche or niche?
Niches.
Yeah. The riches are in the niches. And that's because, again, I read over and over that when you write a broad book, it doesn't impact anybody. Where if you write for a very specific person, that's when you truly capture somebody and make an impact. And I know that already from my TikTok account. My TikTok account, when I first started, it was very much for the broad first gen community. And then my own audience started just being Latinas. So I started leaning into that, right? And I still have some Filipina first gen that follow me, again, Nigerian first gen, even Black professional, first generation professionals that follow me and get value from my account. But the people that get the most value are first gen Latinas because I'll speak about the unique issues in our community. I'll sprinkle in a little Spanglish, and that's my lived experience. So that's what I'm going to be best at dishing out, right?
I'll bring this into the discussion. It was over a year ago because Gigi was about to start writing the book. And she and I have this conversation, one-on-one after FinCon, trying to get to know each other more. And Women's Wealth Effect is still very much in its infancy stage in my mind. And I have been transparently struggling with, do I focus on Latino women? Because that's honestly the thing that I'm exploring the most for myself. Because for the last 15 years, I've been leaving my Latinidad at the door in corporate America.
Yeah. You probably had to.
Very different. That's just what I thought was normal. And it's not what I saw even around myself. And now doing the work that I do, I get to see women who look like me, who speak like my family, who remind me of home, right? And the thing that was so cool about Gigi's book is I'm not first gen. I'm multiple gens in Texas.
Are you from Texas? Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing, right? So, my mom likes to say that she's Tejana, right? There's this whole thing around that. But what Gigi's book did for me was allowed me to better understand my first generation sisters in the Latina community and what goes on in their mind, and how just to even to better relate and to better understand, and even better understand myself and the things that I genuinely have been seeking out in my life and just haven't allowed in for so long, right? Moving to Portugal has had this really interesting thing happen for me. Part of it's because we're so close to Spain, but just being in this romantic, very cultural country, in this familial country. Asia did the same thing for me too, right? And being very close to even the Filipino community that I just didn't have. And I can better relate to where I felt like I couldn't connect. And now I'm able to make different connections in the way that I think about my Latinidad because of books like Gigi's and influencers like herself who are unapologetically leaning into this part of themselves, which is a very whole part of their lives. It's amazing. Attention ladies, want to be a debt-free millionaire? I'm your co-host Stefanie, and I'm here to help you activate your hard-earned income and achieve financial independence. For being a Crush Your Money Goals listener, I invite you to book your free personal one-on-one consultation with me today and get started on your wealth building journey. Visit www.womenswealtheffect.com/free. That's www.womenswealtheffect.com/free and take control of your financial future. Don't wait.
I completely understand, Stefanie, why, because you used to work for Intel. Was it Intel?
For Dell.
Dell. Yeah, for Dell. Yeah. So I mean, I completely understand why you're working at Dell. You had to leave your Latinidad at the floor or at the door, because otherwise you just stick out like a sore thumb. I did a lot of that too in my corporate career. And for me, that really changed with the murder of George Floyd, where I'm like, enough of like, straightening my hair to like blend in, enough of not wearing hoops or just being myself and making myself small to not make my white coworkers uncomfortable. And it's funny because my brothers, I haven't shared this on any podcast, so you guys are getting the exclusive. My brothers are haters. My brothers, actually, last time I saw them, they both called me out because they think that my Latinidad on social media is performative. They said, you've never spoken like this. You've never dressed like this. Like, what is this? Like, this is like a show for social media. And I'm like, you motherfuckers, So I had to explain to them how in corporate, I had to dim my light to fit in. How would they understand? They've never worked a corporate job. One hasn't graduated from high school and the other one never even started college, So it's just a completely different lens that they view life from. They've never lived my corporate life, right? And then they did mention, are you guys familiar with Cadena Collective? It's like a Mexican clothing company. So one of the founders is a very good friend of mine, and she gifted me a lot of beautiful Mexican clothing. So it was still professional, that is still it was something you could wear to the office, but it had like a beautiful Mexican design up top, right? I actually wore one of the dresses at my first FinCon. So it's a maroon dress, and then it has a strip of Mexican embroidery. It's a beautiful, beautiful dress. And my brothers are like, what's up with all this Mexican clothes that and mind you, my brothers live in Mexico, okay? They live in Mexico. So they're like, what's all this Mexican clothes you're wearing now? You never wore that before. And I'm like, yeah, you idiots, because before I had to dim my light. I had to wear black and white so that I wouldn't stand out in the office. And now since George Floyd, like, I'm just like, I cannot go back to that. So that plays a big role in why I'm unapologetically Latina. And you can't hide this. You can't hide my skin color, So I don't know what I was trying to do. I was playing myself, right? Because like it never was going to work for us. Like assimilation doesn't work for us, right? There's a whole book on that, but I'm not going to give her any free press. But it doesn't work for us. So
It brings me
the other thing I was going to say.
Ay, es muy chingona kind of like vibes, right? Like, ay, es muy chingona, doing this over here. Like, it brings me to like George Lopez's comedy special where like, if you're acting like yourself, you can't act like yourself type thing. And it's just really interesting. Because I can see, not necessarily that my brothers are going that hard in on me, but I take it very to heart whenever family members comment on mine and my husband's success or whatever, right? And it's like, can we not just be supportive of each other and have an open conversation on how we can move forward together so we can help each other?
That's a whole another conversation.
I was going to say, we need to have another podcast episode just about this because I have a brother too. And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that prevalent in the Filipino community?
How many times I've gotten some version of who do you think you are? Like for doing what I do. And I actually have 8 siblings, but I like one that
goodness.
I have 7 half brothers and sisters and 1 full brother. And my brother like point blank said to me one day, he's like, you think you're better than us? And I was just like, what have I done or said?
My grandpa said that to me.
Mm-hmm. I bet you many women who are listening to this podcast have had some version of who do you think you are? Like you think you're better than everyone else when really again, it's a projection of like the insecurities that we were trying to placate for so long. Right. So like the fact that you're saying like, I'm not hiding this shit anymore. Like we are done with that. Right. Oh my gosh. Like now I feel like you're coming back, Gigi, and we're gonna like
we have another season already planned.
We're definitely gonna discuss.
Yeah, there's a lot more I can share there. Yeah.
For the women who are listening to this, who are on the brink of quitting, whatever that quitting is, do you have a piece of advice, like a tactical piece of advice that you think can help them make a decision one way or the other?
So for us, it's hard because as Latinos, we very much want our parents' approval in how we do things. So I knew that when I talked to my dad, I knew he wouldn't be supportive. And I'm thankful that I was strong enough to move past it. And there were other people that are like, what are you doing? Other family members. And I said, you know what? If this doesn't work out, I'll go back to what I was doing before. So for me, I felt very secure because again, I didn't just like throw my hands in the air and said, screw you guys, like I'm quitting TikTok because you denied my request. No, I exited very professionally, right? I quit smartly is what I like to tell people. And I had savings set aside to be able to kind of explore interests. But what really, really, really empowered me to quit was a conversation that I had with a good friend. Well, first of all, my 2 best friends had already told me. They had told me, you should explore this. And I'm like, stop it. This is my money for my travel sabbatical. My husband, my then boyfriend had told me, you need to explore this. Shut up. This money's for traveling. It wasn't until I talked to a friend that I hadn't spoken to in years. So he and I were college friends. And for whatever reason, we reconnected on Facebook Messenger and I told him that I was kind of in this fork in the road. And he said, you know what? Give me a call. He said, let's talk about this. And we talked for an hour. Again, mind you, I haven't seen this man in years, okay? Because he's in LA and I'm in Chicago now. Back then I was in Phoenix. And he heard me out and he said, Giovanna, your whole life you've played it safe. You went to college, you got a safe degree, got a safe recession-proof job. Like, this is your chance. This is your chance. You have money, right? You have money set aside. I'm like, I do. And he's like, this is your chance to bet on yourself and let's see what happens. Something beautiful can come out of it. And if it doesn't work, go back to your old job. And I was crying because I'm like, I needed to hear this. I needed to hear this. And I actually, I just sent him his signed copy. So I said, hey, Chava, I said, I don't even know that this book would exist if it wasn't for you. You know what that conversation meant to us? Yeah. Cause I was very much, again, connecting with somebody from my past that knows how I thought back then and seeing what could be possible. And, he's a teacher. So I can just imagine the impact that he has on his students as he pushes them to achieve more. And yeah, I'm very thankful that I surrounded myself by positive people that encouraged me. I'm thankful that I had the savings set aside so that financially I knew I was going to be okay. And I'm thankful that I quit my job smartly so that I had an open door to come back to if I needed to.
I love it. That's awesome. That's amazing. good for him opening the door after not having chatted for
Shout
so
out to
long.
Shava.
He obviously saw something in you. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We will send this podcast to him and let him know that
I shouted him out so many times. He's probably sick of it.
Somehow, I don't think he is. Somehow, I think he realized his calling too, probably in this too. And hopefully, for those of you who are listening, being able to extract one or two things that you can take as not just inspiration, but tactical, loving shove in the direction of where you want to be. So, Gigi, if people want to find out more about you and your book, where can they find you?
Thank you. You're so sweet. And thank you again for having me on the podcast. You can learn all about my book and where to buy on my website, culturaandcash.com. It's available on all major online retailers like Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble. Of course, you can also support your local bookstore by having them order it for you, or have your local library get it in stock so you can read it for free and your community can access it for free. And you can actually get access to the introduction chapter by visiting culturaandcash.com. You get access to the PDF and an audio version of the introduction chapter if you want to check that out first. And last thing I do want to say, I really hope that you guys do have me back to discuss this crabs in a barrel mentality that is not discussed about enough. Yeah. So I am looking forward to that conversation because it needs to be had.
Oh yeah. No, we will definitely have a podcast called No More Crabs.
No more crabs. So many people will be very interested in what we're really going to talk about. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crush Your Money Goals podcast.
Please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback helps us spread the wealth of knowledge to more women like you.
And if you'd like to work with me to help you answer the important question, if I'm on track to retire, be sure to snag my free financial independence planner at womenswealtheffect.com/planner.
And if you'd like to work with me to kickstart your financial freedom plan, you can grab the Ching Checklist, my free guide at crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide.
See you next time.